Ashley, what do you think about the Hussmann Roadshow?
I'm very excited to have the Roadshow back
Yeah.
in Toronto. We have a very big turnout planned. We have all of the major retailers coming
Nice.
to see the Roadshow. But more importantly, our emphasis this year is on community stewardship
Yeah.
and bringing training to the industry. There's a lot of big changes happening in the regulatory environment, and it's very important that we, as well as our contractors, stay on top of the changes that are coming.
Yeah, and that's a big thing because in the US right now we got the AIMS Act, we got SNAP. So a lot of changes happen very rapidly in the US, but Canada, we're not seeing that shift just yet. We keep hearing about it, but it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. We don't know when. So, our aim with this roadshow is to bring the different technologies and solutions and training
Yeah.
to the contractor base so that they're ready when
Yeah.
when the new regs get passed.
Because I know we were talking a little bit before is that in the US, we see the regulations pushing this. Here in Canada, it's more of the retailers that are pushing it. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Definitely. So, the Canadian retailers have been on the forefront of CO2 adoption. I believe that we installed our first cases into a CO2 store in 2012.
Yeah.
So we're 12 years
Yeah.
into this evolution up here. And a lot of the retailers adopted transcritical CO2 for new construction. Um, and that works very well. Our climate is suited
Yeah.
to
That's
transcritical
perfect.
CO2, but a lot of questions still remain about how do we tackle renovations? How do we tackle half a store renovation, full store renovation? How can we change to natural refrigerants while keeping our stores open and keeping our shoppers in a specific store?
Yeah.
So that's what you'll see around the trailer is all the different technologies that Hussmann has been working on to address any of these construction challenges that our retailers are facing.
Yeah. And because that's the big thing, it's disruption of stores that retailers don't want. We want the stores open as long as possible. And then when you do a massive shift, like going to CO2, sometimes, you have to have a store down for a little bit, depending on where you're at. And they don't want that. So how do we mitigate that?
Yeah, I mean, competition is fierce in the Canadian retail environment, in the American retail environment too, but you don't want to lose a shopper even one time.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that these renovations are minimize disruption.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on these new regulations? Because some of the customers in the US, a lot of them are learning about the new regulations. The big ones, the big retailers, they know, but a lot of little retailers are just starting to learn about some of these regulations. How do you think that shift is going to happen in Canada? Do you think the smaller retailers are going to be able to handle the shift as quickly as the big retailers?
I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on the independent retailers.
Yeah.
I think that the cost structure of these types of projects is different than what they've been dealing with in the past. And I think that's why we think that training is so important. The more you know before you get into one of these projects, the easier it's going to go. One of our focuses with the trailer this year is to focus on those smaller contractors.
Yes.
As I said, the bigger retailers in Canada have been doing transcritical CO2 for 10 plus years.
Yeah, decades.
They have a lot of learning and experience under their belts. The independents are a little bit slower to adopt, but they're coming too. And they have different store sizes, different formats that mean that we're going to have different technology to address their needs.
Yeah. And I've been at the Roadshow last year. It was an amazing event seeing the new technologies as it evolved, because that was when you launched your first transcritical with the transcritical scroll units. Now it's a year later, that product's out being tested. And what's great about retailers coming here is they get to see this and talk with you. What are some of the things that you're excited about for the retailers? Because we know change is happening and you're helping guide them with the education. But what are some of the technologies that you're really excited about to show the Canadian retailers?
We are very excited about the CO2 protocol.
Yeah.
The DX or standard refrigerant protocol has been in the market for 30 plus years. It was a very successful, very reliable product. Our retailers have been telling us for years, when are you going to have a protocol? So it's here. The testing is underway. We want to make sure that it's going to be just as reliable and easily installed as the DX protocol. So I think that's very exciting. The footprint of the protocol means we're going to be able to introduce transcritical CO2 in stores in smaller areas.
Yeah.
We're also pretty excited about the monoblock. It's behind me. That is an R290 solution for walk-in boxes.
Yeah.
So we know there's a lot of merchandisers and displays that have R290 as a refrigerant, but this allows us to have R290 in the back of store too. It's a very easily installed product. As long as your box has the right size hole cut out, drop it in. We did an installation of one of these a few months ago, and the construction project manager was shocked. It was up and running in less than an hour.
Wow. Yeah.
So if you're adding capacity or changing configurations and put a new box up, that is something that you can easily tap into without either impacting your existing refrigeration system or having to add more.
Yeah. And some of the big changes too that I'm really excited about. We know propane is an amazing refrigerant, right? It's very efficient, similar to R22. But the recent changes going from 300 grams to 500 grams is like a game changer for all manufacturers. And this is really going to help retailers out. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, certainly. Because Hussmann, this is our MDS unit, and it was launched 7 years ago, I think. And with the 150 gram propane limit, you are very limited to the size of compressor that you can use, which means a lot of compressors per store.
Yeah.
The more compressors you have, the more energy usage you have. So there's a real fine balance there, right? You have a very efficient green refrigerant, but you have to use more compressors to get the cooling power that you need. So that increase in charge limit is going to enable us to get the number of compressors down, which is going to impact cost structure and also energy usage. So I think that will be huge. Also maintenance and all the things that go along with that, right? So that will allow more of the full store footprint in R290 without some of the traditional challenges that we've had with self-contained cases.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the big things is, though, I remember even about 8 years ago, you guys were one of the first ones to do water-cooled loop with propane in southern U.S. And that's your first design. That's one of your first designs. You know what I mean? So your technology came a long way since then. And now that we can go from that 150 to 300 or 300 to 500, depending on the type of unit. So now that you get these newer units, updated units, they're going to have less units in their building to actually maintain the same amount what it was like 8 or 9 years ago. So this is like a real game changer for Hussmann at a whole.
Yeah, I think it's going to allow a water-cooled option. Some of our retailers that operate in the southern U.S. have realized that in certain environments, transcritical CO2 has an energy penalty. The larger charge limits on propane are going to allow them to use propane where propane makes sense. I think the biggest thing moving forward is going to be having a menu that retailers can choose from. Does micro DS with R290 work make sense? Does monoblock make sense for your back of house? Does the CO2 protocol allow you to do a transcritical CO2 renovation in a smaller space or on a different timeline? I mean, the other thing that the CO2 protocol will allow retailers to do is match their capital to the size of projects.
Yes.
Because right now, when you're doing these major, either new stores or major renovations, very costly. And with transcritical CO2, you have to bring on a certain amount of load. So you have to change out a pretty big part of the store at one time, which makes the renovations really difficult.
Yep.
So I think this is going to allow retailers to meet some of their environmental and sustainability goals on a smaller footprint, on a smaller budget.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be a game changer for retailers, because those struggles, you're minimizing them now. That less downtime is the biggest thing for all of them. And when you can get that is a huge advantage for them.
And we've heard from some of our smaller retailers that transcritical CO2 has just been out of reach because of the cost.
Yeah.
And so with having some of these smaller footprint options, that's going to open the door to some of the smaller retailers to work towards their sustainability goals as well.
Exactly. So the Hussmann Roadshow, this is the 5th year. You started out and you're like, okay, let's figure out if this is going to help the industry. And now I know you guys did a lot of training and showing off a lot of product, but now it's more into the stewardship event where you're getting customers and trying to really educate them on what's going on in the industry. You want to talk a little bit about the Roadshow?
Yeah, so the Roadshow was dreamt up around the time of the pandemic when our customers weren't able to get to trade shows. And with so many changes going on in the industry, Hussmann still felt that it was very important to get out and have those conversations with their customers. So the Roadshow enabled us to take this trailer on the road to specific targeted customers and keep that dialogue going in a safe environment. We could have 2 people in here, 6 people in here, whatever we needed to have, depending on what was going on with the pandemic. But the Roadshow was so well received that after the pandemic was over and trade shows have come back, our customers have been still asking us to bring new technologies to them. It's not often that we would have a CO2 protocol on the floor of a trade show. So this really allows not only our retailers, but also the contractors to come in, kick the tires, see what they're going to be seeing on projects. Because contractors sometimes tell us that they feel, they show up on the project and that's when they learn what they're going to install, right? So this is going to enable them to touch and feel and ask all the questions that they might have before they see this in a project, because their timelines are so tight and labor is so short. So that was the stewardship part of this, is let's bring training to the industry. As you mentioned, the regulations have changed in the US. They haven't yet in Canada, but we know they're coming. So it's really important for us to enable all of our partners to be as proactive as they can about what's coming.
And it's a great opportunity to come and talk with the experts. Like come and talk with Ashley and John and all the other experts here and get those questions in that you might not have the opportunity in the field. And this is what's great for the contractor. What about this? What about that? With the engineers, you have Chris here as well. And all these experts are here really to share as much knowledge as possible to make it comfortable and easy.
Yes, definitely. It's all about bringing our knowledge to a broader base of people. Hussmann is a large company and sometimes people feel like they don't know who to go to. And so we've really sort of streamlined that and made sure we have the right people. I think it's safe to say there probably won't be too many unanswered questions this week because we have a lot of experts here.
No, and I think that's really important, is to get those questions answered and come and do that networking. This is one of the biggest things that I love, is networking with the customers, the contractors, and just getting those conversations going. You want to talk a little bit about that?
There are so many wonderful contractors in our space, and we partner with them. And we really wanted to make this Roadshow an opportunity to kind of give back to them as well. We're going to host a luncheon today to have them all in. We wanted you to be here just as another expert to be able to answer different questions that they may have. So it's really about making sure that they understand how important they are to us too. We all have to work together. In my career, there has never been a more important time for collaboration. This is going to take the retailers, their design team, their construction team, excellent trained contractors, as well as vendor partners to provide the right products.
You're totally right about that. I think it's an industry where we need to come together right now, because there's so much change for everybody, and having those conversations, starting those conversations, is going to be very key to get everybody up to the same pace. I highly recommend you checking out one of these events. They're a lot of fun. You'll learn a lot. You'll grow. My name is Sean Matthews. Let's get a conversation going.